In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. To fully understand Jacob's nighttime wrestling match with God, we need to know a little bit of his backstory. The Hebrew name Jacob means trickster. Somehow his parents just knew. When Jacob's elder brother Esau came back from a hunting trip famished and said, "Boy, I'd trade my birthright for some of that stew you've got cooking," Jacob said, "Deal," and handed him a bowl. Then later on, to make it official, Jacob, encouraged, aided, and abetted by his mother, deceived his dying father Isaac into thinking that he was Esau. Jacob received the blessing that traditionally went to the eldest son, along with everything that went with that blessing, which was literally everything. When Esau learned this, he threatened to kill Jacob. And since Esau was the hunter of the family, Jacob did the smart thing and left for a distant land, where he stayed for about 20 years. Now, all of us suffer some measure of dysfunction in our family, some more than others, but few worse than what happened between Jacob and Esau. Deception of a dying father, theft of an elder brother's inheritance, an elder brother threatening to kill his younger brother, followed by a separation of 20 years. Yet God took those frail, flawed, frightened people and made history with them. Imagine what God can do with us, no matter how messed up some of our relationships may be. But it gets even better. Skipping forward those 20 years, God told Jacob to go home. It was time. He had married well, worked hard, and accumulated significant wealth, in part by cheating his father-in-law Laban. Though, to be fair, Laban played a few nasty tricks on Jacob too, like switching out one daughter for another at his first wedding. That rough journey home brings us to the banks of the river Jabbok, where Jacob now stands alone. He had calculated that Esau's rage had probably not cooled much over the years, so he sent a peace offering onward with his servants who must have been very loyal and very nervous. As a precaution, Jacob also sent his wives, maids, and children across the river. Night fell, and darkness descended, the likes of which we must travel far to experience in a world of headlights and street lamps and acres of parking lots that are aglow from dusk to dawn. It was likely quiet there, maybe too quiet for comfort, the sound of moving water, the loudest noise. Jacob must have been worried, wondering whether Esau would accept his present and be reconciled, or take his vengeance instead. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, someone wrapped his arms around Jacob and dragged him to the ground. Jacob probably thought it was Esau, or one of his men sent to kill him. So Jacob fought back fiercely. They wrestled all night. Dirt caked up on sweaty skin, the guttural sounds of a life struggle bruising the silence. Jacob tried every move only to be bested time and again. His opponent's grip was just too strong. Beyond exhaustion, muscles burning, mind focused sharply on surviving, Jacob wrestled for hours in the dark with an unidentifiable silhouette. As the first light of dawn broke from the east, Jacob suffered a dislocated hip, an excruciating injury, or so I'm told. But Jacob would not let go. He wanted to know who he had been fighting all night. With every new ray from the sun, Jacob got closer to learning the identity of his attacker, who demanded to be released. But Jacob refused. "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And then, after this strange and violent night, things got even stranger. The stranger who had wrestled with Jacob gave him a new name, Israel, which in Hebrew means God strives. So it's not trickster anymore, it's God strives. In ancient cultures, changing a person's name meant changing their identity at a foundational level. At a crucial moment in their covenant with God, Abram and Sarai became Abraham and Sarah, marking a major shift in their lives. Jesus renamed his chief disciple, Simon, Peter, which is Greek for rock. Jacob well understood what had just happened, and naturally enough, he asked the name of his assailant, who mysteriously responded, "Why is it that you ask my name?" As if Jacob should have already known. Finally, the man blessed him, and Jacob realized that his wrestling match was with no man, but with God. "For I have seen God face to face," Jacob said, "and yet my life is preserved." That same morning, Esau arrived and embraced Jacob, erasing their estrangement, which took generous grace on Esau's part and showed how much he loved his younger brother despite what he had done. Forgiveness triumphed, and Jacob limped along through life happily ever after, more or less. Now, like Jacob, all of us have regrets. None of us are perfect. Each of us has done something wrong or failed to do the right thing at the right moment. Only those who lack a conscience or who have received a saintly peace are immune to the sting of regret. We have taken, deceived, cheated, and fled the consequences as best we could. Only by returning to the scene of the crime can we hope to find forgiveness and reconciliation. And that journey is hard. Just getting started along the way proves difficult, and the temptation to stop and turn back constantly flits through our minds, hampering our hope by accentuating our fears. At some point on the path of faith, perhaps on a riverbank, or in bed, or at work, or in school, or at worship, God will grab you and wrestle you to the ground. And He will not let you go until He's finished. And no matter where you are at that moment, you will be utterly alone and probably desperate. Desperate like Jacob, who sought forgiveness and reconciliation with his brother at the risk of his life. No matter how hard you struggle to wriggle free, the grip will remain firm. There will be no escaping. In that moment of panic, you will suffer pain, severe pain, like a dislocated hip. It probably won't be physical, though. It will more likely be emotional, psychological, and spiritual pain. All you will want is for it to be over, preferably with God flat on His belly in a half Nelson. But it won't be over until the light of dawn pierces the horizon, and sometimes the sun seems to rise so slow. Yet when the darkness disperses, you can expect a blessing if you ask for it. You'll probably limp away with the same name that you started with, but everything else will be different. Wrestling with God changes who you are. It's not an experience that anyone chooses. We can't make it happen. In fact, we dread that dark night of the soul, wrestling with the unseen, the unknown. We can waste a lifetime trying to avoid it. However, it will come. And when God grabs you, grab back. And don't let go. Because the dawn that breaks a night of struggle promises new possibilities, new perspective, wisdom, cleansing, and the relief of peace. In fact, we would be prudent to pray for that night of wrestling to come quickly and often. It brings the blessing we most need. closeness with God. Wrestling with God isn't the only way to be close with God, but it's a good way. Because no two people can get closer to one another than when they're wrestling with one another on the ground.